This is the second video in this little series about why the breakdown of the state and the welfare state is not necessarily something to be feared by ordinary people. Now, the state impoverishes ordinary people, you, in three ways. Firstly, through feminism. Secondly, through mass immigration. Thirdly, through money printing. Now, I want to deal with feminism. I don't want to deal with the direct harm that feminism does to men. I want to look at the indirect harm that it does to women. Now, most women say that they would prefer, most women with children say they would prefer to stay at home with the children and not go outside the home in order to work. That's the majority. The overwhelming majority of women, particularly married women, say that if they do work, they want it to be because they choose to work and not because they have to work. Feminism denies both of these. And it does it because it encourages and pushes and chivies women to go to work and for employees to take on more women, make it more fashionable, putting pressure on women to go to work, inducing women to go to work. And what that means is that when women enter the workforce gets bigger. The bigger the workforce gets, the more wages go down through a simple process of supply and demand. And what that means is that then wages go down, suddenly hubby can't support the family on his own anymore, and the wife, and that household where it used to require one wage to support the family now requires two wages. The wife has to go out to work as well, and then she has no choice about that. She doesn't have the choice available to stay at home with the children if she wants to, and the ideal that most women share, which is to be able to choose whether or not they go out to work. Both of those things are taken away from them. Both of those things that married women want. Now you can compare this, and this compares sharply with post-war America, where women exited the workforce in order to get on with the baby boom, and that is known as the golden age of America, or the golden age of the American middle class, because a husband was able, the middle class mushroomed, hubby was able to go out to work and on his own wage support a wife, 3 or 4 children, a house in the suburbs and 2 cars. Pretty much unthinkable for your average middle class worker today. And you can liken the situation today with the situation in 1930s Britain, where economic growth was in fact strong. It was 4.2% economic growth per year between 32 and 1940. So that's a fast rate of growth, but wages stagnated. It's known as it's seen as a stagnant decade, mainly because women entered the workforce so fast that diluted wages. And the bottom line is that feminism impoverishes women. It effectively enslaves women, because whereas women could have a family and run a family without having to go to work, now in order to have a family and run a family, they have to go out to work as well. Effectively, women have to go out to work, and for no extra money, for no gain. That is, women having to go out to work for nothing, for no pay. That is effectively enslaving women. And what is the irony is that women are enslaved in favour for the benefit of the pinnacle, the peak of the patriarchy, and that is the mega rich male owners of big companies that are selling goods, products, items, not necessarily labour, but goods and items into the economy, because those big businesses, they benefit from cheap labour rates, cheap wage rates. And the question then is, the philosophical question is whether if a feminist said something and nobody listened, would it still be stupid? Now, I can answer that question by saying there is nothing stupider than a feminist, except the feminist hag who spends all day travelling to go to a railway station or a port or harbour in order to scream about how welcome sexually aggressive migrants are. Now, if the state goes down, I would expect that feminist ideology to go down, because the state pushes that feminist ideology. It pushes women into the workforce through things like quotas and phony equal pay legislation. If that were to go down, I would expect women going out to work to become just a bit less fashionable, for women to feel a bit under a bit less pressure, to go out into the workforce. And some women, perhaps the wives of higher earning husbands, they might say, actually, I don't particularly want to go out to work. I never did in the first place. I'm going to leave work and stay at home, perhaps stay at home with the children. That means the workforce shrinks because some women leave it, workforce shrinks, wages increase. That means hubby, the men, start earning a bit more, and a few more women will suddenly notice hubby's earning a bit more money. Actually, I don't really need to go to work. His wages are enough to support the whole family. I think I will give up work as well. And then they exit the workforce shrinks, and wages go up, and so on, until you reach an equilibrium of people doing what they want to do. There will be some women who simply do want to go out and work full time outside the home. There'll be others who want to do probably more, quite a lot more, who want to do 1 or 2 days a week, as long as it's with colleagues they like, doing something they value, and as long as it's something they could give up if they really wanted to, or if it started to interfere in any way with family life. But what would happen if the state went down is that particular engine of misery and impoverishment would or will go down. Now, the second thing is mass immigration. This has a similar effect on wages to the effect that feminism has, only worse. It is similar in that you get new migrants, immigrants coming in, they come into the workforce, they compete with the existing workforce, they enlarge the workforce, that reduces wages. That is attractive to politicians. But it's worse than that. The reason it's and on top of that, immigration creates stress, tension, the harm to neighbourhoods and the loss of a sense of home, which again grinds people down, makes people more dependent. But it is the economic effect of mass immigration is worse than feminism, because what you're getting is a constant stream of new entrants into the workforce. And that means they're competing with the people, not with the wider workforce, total number of employees, but with the small minority of employees who are actively looking for work, because that is where pay rates, wage levels are set, not amongst employees as a whole, but amongst the tiny minority of employees who are actively looking for work, between them and the employers who are offering jobs. When you get an influx of hundreds of thousands of immigrants per year, they have a massively disproportionate effect, because when they're competing with that tiny proportion of the workforce, a hugely disproportionate effect on wages, dumping wage rates. That's incredibly unfair, but governments and politicians like that, because it renders people impoverished. It grinds people down. It makes people more welfare dependent, and thus more dependent on politicians, and more hankering after politicians' promises of welfare. And that process transfers money from the poor to the rich. And that gives politicians the illusion of, it enables them to put forward the illusion of economic stability, because then that transfer of money up the chain from the poor to the rich, it repairs the balance sheets of banks. It improves profit margins of big companies and cash flow for big companies by diluting and dumping the wages that they have to pay. And that is paid for not by government, but by the poor, by ordinary people subsidising big business in effect. And politicians like that, because it means they can say, look how well the economy is doing, whilst at the same time impoverishing you, making you more dependent. Third, money printing. I dealt with that in the last little video I did. In summary, money printing has the effect of increasing the value of capital assets. All that money goes into the economy. It has to find a home somewhere. It will go into the value of capital assets. Again, increasing the wealth of the rich. People who own capital assets are the rich. It then increases the value of the capital assets that they own. One major source of capital assets is the housing market, and so you then get a property boom, and you see the effect on ordinary people: mortgage rates, house prices, rents going up and up. And at the same time, that money printing dilutes the value of wages. So the effect on ordinary people is to struggle harder and harder every month just to make the rent payment, the mortgage payment. Wages getting squeezed, rent payments, mortgage payments going up. Again, a wealth transfer from the poor, from ordinary people to the rich. Now, that process of transferring money from the poor to the rich, it seems to me, it seems to pervade pretty much every aspect of government policy. It's hard not to see it as an integral part, an integral aspect of state policy. And it's hard to see it ending because it's so convenient to politicians. It enables them to say, look how healthy the economy is. The banks are standing up. The banks aren't going broke. Big companies are making more profits. Isn't that great? Isn't the economy booming? And it keeps you dependent upon politicians. Now, I don't think that politicians sit down and calculate that and think, well, how are we going to do this tomorrow? I think it's simply a matter of class interest, of class instinct, and the unscrupulous addiction to power, which people will do anything to get and to get more of once they have a taste of it. Now, what this means is that no welfare state can compensate for the size of the constant flow of money from the poor to the rich that state policy seems to create. And what that in turn means is that although the state and the welfare state shouldn't be torn down, you shouldn't try to think you shouldn't agitate for the breakdown of the state and the welfare state. On the other hand, neither should the breakdown of the state and the welfare state be something to be feared, particularly by ordinary people.